The reception hall felt too warm, filled with relatives eating catered sandwiches and sharing memories of Mom. I stood near the window overlooking the vineyard she'd spent 30 years building from 5 acres of neglected vines into a profitable 20-acre estate. The Pinot Noir rows stretched toward the hills, heavy with late September fruit ready for harvest. My brother Derek found me there, standing with our Aunt Patricia and 2 cousins. He carried a leather portfolio, the expensive kind lawyers use. His suit was impeccable, custom-tailored, probably $5,000. He'd always cared more about appearances than substance. "I need everyone's attention," Derek announced, his voice cutting through the murmur of conversation. The room gradually quieted. He smiled, that confident smile I'd seen 1,000 times growing up, the one that said he'd already won whatever game we were playing. "I know this is difficult timing, but there's something everyone needs to know about. Mom's final wishes." He opened the portfolio and pulled out several stapled documents. Mom updated her will 4 months ago, in May. She made very clear decisions about her estate. My stomach tightened. Mom had mentioned updating her will, but she'd told me about it in March. She'd been very specific about her intentions. The vineyard would be split between Derek and me, with provisions for our cousin Sarah, who'd helped with harvest for years. The investment accounts and the house would be divided equally. Mom believed in fairness above all else. According to this will, properly witnessed and notarized, I inherit the vineyard, the house on the property, and the primary investment accounts. Derek's smile widened. "The estate is valued at approximately $2.3 million. Mom established a trust that gives me full control," Aunt Patricia gasped. "Derek, that can't be right. Your mother always said." Mom changed her mind. His voice took on a sharp edge. "I was here every day while Jennifer was building her career in Seattle. I managed the vineyard operations. I drove Mom to her doctor appointments. I was here when she fell and broke her hip last winter. Jennifer visited maybe 4 times a year." He looked directly at me. Mom knew who really cared about her, and she knew who deserved to continue her legacy. The room erupted in whispered conversations. Cousin Sarah looked stricken. She'd been counting on the provision Mom had promised her to help buy her own small plot of land. Aunt Patricia's face flushed with anger. I felt everyone's eyes on me, waiting for my reaction. Part of me wanted to scream that it was a lie, that Mom would never do something so contrary to everything she believed about family and fairness. But I'd learned long ago that reacting emotionally to Derek's provocations only made things worse. Instead, I nodded quietly and said, "I'd like to see the documentation." "Of course." Derek's tone dripped with false magnanimity. "I've already filed it with the probate court. Mom used Henderson and Associates to draft it. Everything is completely legal and binding." Henderson and Associates, not Marilyn Chen, Mom's attorney of 15 years. That detail alone made my pulse quicken, but I kept my expression neutral. "When exactly did she sign this?" I asked carefully. "May 18th, about 4 months before she passed." Derek handed me a copy of the will. The signature at the bottom looked like Mom's flowing script, her distinctive capital E, in Eleanor. The way she looped her R's, but something about it felt wrong, though I couldn't articulate exactly what. "I'll need time to review this," I said. Derek shrugged. "Review all you want. It won't change anything. The will is valid, properly executed, and filed with the court. If you want to contest it, good luck finding a lawyer willing to take a case you can't win." Mom made her choice. Jennifer chose the child who was actually there for her. That stung because it contained just enough truth to be effective. I had built my career in Seattle. I did visit only once every few months, though we talked on the phone 3 times a week. But Derek's narrative conveniently omitted that he'd moved into the vineyard manager as cottage 5 years ago, that Mom had subsidized his lifestyle while he found himself, and that his help with the vineyard came with the salary Mom paid him from the business profits. I excused myself and walked outside into the September afternoon. The harvesting equipment sat idle in the equipment barn. Mom had planned to bring in the Pinot Noir the following week. Now everything hung in uncertainty. I pulled out my phone and made a call I'd been preparing to make since I'd arrived for the funeral 3 days ago. "Marilyn Chen's office," the receptionist answered. "This is Jennifer Hartwell. I need to speak with Marilyn urgently." 3 days after the funeral, I sat in Marilyn Chen's law office in downtown Sonoma. She was a sharp woman in her 60s who'd handled Mom's legal affairs since she bought the vineyard property. Mom had trusted her completely. I got your message about Derek's will, Marilyn said, her expression troubled. She opened a file on her desk. Jennifer, your mother did update her will, but not in May. She came to see me on July 2nd, 6 weeks before she passed. My heart hammered. July 2nd. Yes, she called me in late June. Quite upset, actually. She said she'd heard that Derek had been telling people she was planning to leave everything to him. She wanted to make sure her actual intentions were crystal clear and properly documented. Marilyn pulled out a bound document. This is your mother's will, executed in my office with 2 of my paralegals as witnesses. She was very specific about what she wanted. I took the document with shaking hands. It laid out exactly what Mom had told me in March: the vineyard split between Derek and me, with Sarah receiving a 10% stake and $50,000 in cash. The house and investment accounts divided equally. Everything fair, everything balanced, exactly like Mom. She also insisted on something unusual, Marilyn continued. She pulled out her phone and tapped the screen. She asked me to video record the signing. She said Derek had been pressuring her about the estate, and she wanted irrefutable proof that she was of sound mind and clear intentions. She turned the phone toward me. On the screen, Mom sat at the conference table in this same office, looking healthy and alert. The video was dated July 2, 2024, time-stamped at 2:47 p.m. I, Eleanor Marie Hartwell, am signing my last will and testament today, Mom said clearly into the camera. I'm doing this of my own free will, with no pressure or influence from anyone. My daughter Jennifer and my son Derek are both here in spirit. Though only my attorney Marilyn Chen and her staff are physically present, I want to make absolutely clear that I'm leaving my estate divided fairly between my children, with provisions for my niece Sarah, who has been such a help with the vineyard. The video showed her signing the document. Each page initialed the witness's signing. Everything proper and legal. She was adamant, Marilyn said softly. She told me Derek had been talking about his inheritance in his vineyard for months, as if it was already decided. It troubled her deeply, because she'd never indicated any such intention. Why didn't you come forward when Derek filed his will? I asked. I only learned about it yesterday when your Aunt Patricia called me. I've been in Los Angeles for the past 2 weeks, dealing with my father's estate. When I got back and checked my messages, everything clicked into place. She leaned forward. Jennifer, this Henderson and Associates will is a forgery. Your mother never went to that firm. She never signed any will in May. This document I have, dated July 2nd, is her actual final will. I felt rage and relief warring in my chest. What do? We contest Derek's will in probate court. With this video evidence and the proper documentation, we'll prove his will is fraudulent. But Jennifer ... She paused, her expression grave. You need to understand what you're accusing your brother of. This isn't just a family dispute. If we prove that will is forged, Derek could face criminal charges. Forgery, fraud, possibly elder exploitation if we can show he pressured your mother before she came to see me. He stood at Mom's funeral and lied to everyone. He tried to steal from me, from Sarah, from everyone Mom cared about. My voice was steel. What do I need to do? Marilyn made a list. First, we'd need a forensic handwriting expert to examine both wills. Second, we'd subpoena Henderson and Associates to determine if they actually drafted Derek's will or if someone forged their involvement. Third, we'd gather evidence of the timeline, Mom's medical records, calendar appointments, anything that could verify her movements in May versus July. I've already consulted with a forensic document examiner, I admitted, Dr. Patricia Morrison at the San Francisco Institute of Forensic Science. I sent her a copy of Derek's will 2 days ago. Marilyn raised her eyebrows. You were prepared. I knew, Mom. The moment Derek said she'd left him everything, I knew something was wrong. Mom believed in fairness above everything else. She would never cut me out, never exclude Sarah. It went against everything she stood for. I met Marilyn's eyes. I was hoping you'd have proof of what I suspected. Your mother was a remarkable woman, Marilyn said. Let's make sure her actual wishes are honored. Dr. Patricia Morrison's office was located in a nondescript building near the Embark. She was a woman in her 50s with close-cropped silver hair and intense gray eyes. Her walls displayed her credentials, degrees from Georgetown and Stanford, certifications from the American Board of Forensic Document Examiners, publications in peer-reviewed journals. I've completed my preliminary analysis, she said, spreading both wills across her examination table. The table had built-in magnification and specialized lighting. The signature on the May will purporting to be Eleanor Hartwell's is a forgery. She pulled out a tablet showing side-by-side comparisons of signatures, blown up to reveal minute details. Handwriting analysis examines multiple factors, Dr. Morrison explained. Pressure patterns, stroke dynamics, letter formation, pen lifts, tremor, hesitation marks, and what we call line quality. When someone forges a signature, even if they're skilled, they inevitably leave tells. She pointed to Mom's signature on Marilyn's July will. This is Eleanor's authentic signature. Note the fluidity of the strokes, particularly in the capital E. She makes it in one continuous motion, with the pressure heaviest at the beginning and tapering naturally. The loop in her lowercase l is consistent, and she has a distinctive hook on her final L in Hartwell. Then she switched to Derek's Maywill. Now look at this signature. At first glance, it appears similar, but under magnification, we see 47 distinct inconsistencies. She walked me through them. The capital E showed hesitation markstein pauses, where the forger had stopped to check their work. The pressure pattern was inverted, heavier at the end of strokes rather than the beginning. The loops in the lowercase letters varied in size and angle, suggesting someone copying rather than naturally writing. The final hook on Hartwell was present but executed with a different pen angle. Most tellingly, Dr. Morrison said, zooming in on one section, there are what we call drawn characteristics. When someone forges a signature, they're essentially drawing it rather than writing it. They're focused on the visual outcome, not the motor memory of the actual writing. This creates subtle differences in stroke dynamics that are impossible to perfectly replicate. She showed me comparison after comparison. The timing between pen lifts was inconsistent with Mom's natural rhythm. The baseline showed wavering that Mom's signatures never exhibited. Even the way certain letters connected tiny details most people would never notice revealed the forgery. How long did this analysis take you? I asked. Dr. Morrison checked her notes. 23 minutes for the initial identification of the forgery. Another 3 hours to document all 47 inconsistencies and prepare the detailed report. But the key findings were evident almost immediately. This is not a subtle forgery. Can you testify to this in court? Absolutely. I've testified in over 200 cases involving questioned documents. I can walk a jury through every single inconsistency with visual aids that make it completely clear. She paused. Ms. Hartwell, whoever forged this signature had some skill. They'd clearly studied your mother's handwriting, but they made critical errors that make this definitively a forgery. My brother had plenty of examples to study, I said bitterly. He lived on the property. He had access to Mom's paperwork, her old checks, documents she'd signed over the years. Dr. Morrison's expression remained professionally neutral, but I saw understanding in her eyes. The report will be ready for your attorney by tomorrow. I've also examined the notary signature and seal on the May document. I'll need to interview the notary listed, but the seal impression appears irregular. I thanked her and left with a USB drive containing her preliminary findings. As I drove back to Sonoma, I called Marilyn with an update. Excellent, Marilyn said. I've been making progress on my end. I contacted Henderson and Associates. They have no record of Eleanor Hartwell as a client. They never drafted any will for her. They've confirmed their letterhead was used without authorization and are cooperating fully with our investigation. So Derek forged their involvement too. It appears so. They're resending me affidavits from their managing partner and their intake coordinator, confirming your mother was never a client. We're also tracking down the notary listed on the documenta Barbara Simmons. If she didn't actually witness the signing, that's another layer of fraud. Over the next 2 weeks, I gathered evidence with the systematic approach I'd learned in my career as a data analyst. I obtained Mom's calendar from her computer. The password was our childhood dog's name, something Derek wouldn't have thought to check. Her calendar showed no appointment with Henderson and Associates on May 18th. Instead, she'd had lunch with Aunt Patricia that day, confirmed by Patricia's own calendar and credit card receipts. I pulled Mom's phone records. No calls to Henderson and Associates in May. No calls to any attorney except Marilyn Chen, whom she'd called multiple times in late June. I interviewed Sarah, who'd helped with the vineyard. Your mom seemed stressed in early May. Sarah told me. Derek kept talking about when the vineyard is mine and my plans for expansion. Your mom pulled me aside one day and said, Sarah, no matter what Derek says, this vineyard will be shared fairly. I'm making sure of it. That was maybe 3 weeks before she went to see her lawyer in July. I documented everything in spreadsheets, timelines, and organized folders. Every piece of evidence pointed to the same conclusion. Derek had forged Mom's will, probably shortly after she died, before anyone could stop him. The notary, Barbara Simmons, was tracked down by Maryland's investigator. She confirmed she'd never met Eleanor Hartwell, never witnessed any signature, and had reported her notary seal stolen from her car in April. Someone had taken it during a break-in at a shopping center. With each piece of evidence, the picture became clearer. Derek had planned this. He'd stolen a notary seal, forged Mom's signature, created a fake will using letterhead from a legitimate law firm, and presented it at the funeral when everyone was too grief-stricken to question it effectively. The probate court hearing was scheduled for October 15th, 5 weeks after Mom's funeral. Derek arrived with his attorney, Marcus Webb, a partner at a mid-sized firm in Santa Rosa. Derek wore another expensive suit and carried himself with absolute confidence. He nodded to relatives in the gallery as if this were a formality. I sat at the petitioner's table with Marilyn. Behind us sat Aunt Patricia, Sarah, and several of Mom's close friends who'd made the trip to support the truth. Dr. Morrison sat in the front row, ready to be called as an expert witness. Judge Catherine Rodriguez presided, a woman with 30 years on the bench and a reputation for zero tolerance for fraud. She reviewed the filings, her expression unreadable. "We're here regarding the contested estate of Eleanor Marie Hartwell," Judge Rodriguez said. "The respondent, Derek Hartwell, has filed a will dated May 18, 2024. The petitioner, Jennifer Hartwell, contests this will and presents an alternative will dated July 2, 2024. Ms. Chen, you represent the petitioner." "Yes, Your Honor." Marilyn stood. "We're prepared to demonstrate that the May will is a complete fabrication. The July will, executed in my office with proper witnesses and documentation, represents Eleanor Hartwell's actual final wishes." Strong words. "Ms. Chen, can you back them up?" "We can, Your Honor. We have forensic handwriting analysis, video documentation of the authentic will signing, testimony from the law firm whose letterhead was forged, and timeline evidence proving the May will could not have been validly executed." Judge Rodriguez turned to Derek's attorney. "Mr. Webb, your response." Marcus Webb stood, smoothing his tie. "Your Honor, the May will was properly executed, witnessed, and notarized. My client has presented a valid testamentary document. The petitioner's will was executed later, but that doesn't automatically invalidate the earlier document if both are valid." "We believe, actually, Your Honor," Marilyn interrupted, "the May will was not properly executed because Eleanor Hartwell never signed it. The signature is forged." The courtroom went completely silent. Derek's face remained impassive, but I saw his jaw tighten. Webb looked startled. Clearly Derek hadn't warned his attorney about this potential challenge. "Those are serious allegations," Judge Rodriguez said. "We have serious proof," Marilyn replied. "I'd like to call Dr. Patricia Morrison, our forensic document examiner." Dr. Morrison took the witness stand and was sworn in. Marilyn quickly established her credentials, her degrees, her certifications, her 2 decades of experience, her publication record. Judge Rodriguez listened intently, occasionally making notes. "Dr. Morrison, have you examined the signature on the May 18th will?" Marilyn asked. "I have. I've compared it extensively to known exemplars of Eleanor Hartwell's authentic signature, including the signature on the July 2nd will executed in your office." "What did you find?" "The May 18th signature is a forgery. I've identified 47 distinct inconsistencies between it and Eleanor Hartwell's authentic signature." Marilyn pulled up the presentation on the courtroom's display screen. "Can you walk us through the key findings?" Dr. Morrison stood and approached the screen. For the next 30 minutes, she methodically destroyed Derek's forgery. She showed the pressure patterns, the stroke dynamics, the hesitation marks, the incorrect pen lifts. She displayed the capital E side-by-side authentic versus forged and the differences were stark once you knew what to look for. "Note here," she indicated a section of the signature, "how the forger has drawn the letter, rather than written it. The stroke shows consistent pressure throughout, whereas Eleanor's authentic signatures show natural pressure variation based on hand movement and motor memory. The forger was focused on visual replication, not on recreating the neuromuscular patterns of Eleanor's actual writing." She continued through inconsistency after inconsistency. The loops that varied in size, the baseline that wavered, the final hook on Hartwell that was present but executed at the wrong angle with the wrong pressure pattern. In your expert opinion, Marilyn asked, is the signature on the May 18th will authentic? No, it is definitively a forgery. No authentic signature would exhibit this many inconsistencies with established exemplars. Webb cross-examined, but weakly. Couldn't handwriting naturally vary from document to document? Natural variation exists, Dr. Morrison agreed, but it occurs within a consistent range of motor patterns. What we see in the May document are unnatural variations. They are fundamental differences in stroke execution that indicate a different hand created the signature. Webb tried a few more angles, but Dr. Morrison had done this hundreds of times. She was unshakable. Marilyn then called the managing partner from Henderson and Associates, who testified they'd never met Eleanor Hartwell and never drafted any will for her. The notary testified her seal had been stolen. I testified about Mom's calendar showing no appointment on May 18th. Finally, Marilyn played the video of Mom signing the July will. The courtroom watched in silence as Mom clearly stated her intentions, signed each page, joked with the paralegals about the upcoming harvest. She was sharp, engaged, obviously of sound mind. The timestamp was irrefutable, July 2, 2024, 6 weeks after the supposed May will. When the video ended, Judge Rodriguez turned to Derek. Mr. Hartwell, would you like to testify? Derek glanced at his attorney. Webb leaned in and whispered urgently. Derek's confident expression had cracked. His face had gone pale, a faint sheen of sweat visible on his forehead. I decline to testify at this time, Derek said. Mr. Webb, Judge Rodriguez's voice was cold. Do you have any evidence to counter what we've just seen and heard? Webb shuffled papers. Your Honor, we'd need time to retain our own handwriting expert to investigate these claims further. You've had 5 weeks since this will was filed. If the signature were authentic, you'd have nothing to investigate. Judge Rodriguez looked at Derek with open contempt. Mr. Hartwell, this court takes testamentary fraud extremely seriously. The evidence presented today is compelling and frankly damning. She turned to Marilyn. Miss Chen, I'm prepared to rule. The May 18th will is declared invalid. It is the finding of this court that the document is fraudulent, that Eleanor Hartwell's signature was forged, and that the will was created without her knowledge or consent. The July 2nd will, properly executed in your office with adequate witness and documentation, is hereby admitted to probate as Eleanor Hartwell's valid last will and testament. Relief flooded through me. Aunt Patricia grabbed my hand and squeezed, but Judge Rodriguez wasn't finished. Furthermore, I'm ordering a full investigation into how this fraudulent document was created and filed. The court is referring this matter to the district attorney's office for potential criminal prosecution. Mr. Hartwell, you should retain criminal defense counsel immediately. Derek stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly. This is ridiculous. I loved my mother. I took care of her. Sit down, Mr. Hartwell, Judge Rodriguez snapped. Your alleged care doesn't give you the right to forge legal documents. If you genuinely cared for your mother, you would have respected her actual wishes instead of creating fraudulent ones to enrich yourself. Webb pulled Derek back into his seat, whispering urgently, the authentic will shall be executed as written. Judge Rodriguez continued, the vineyard and all associated assets will be divided according to Eleanor Hartwell's explicit instructions. Ms. Hartwell, you and your brother will jointly inherit as your mother intended. Sarah Hartwell will receive her designated portion. All transfers or actions taken based on the fraudulent May will are hereby voided. She looked at Derek one more time. You tried to steal from your sister, from your cousin, and most despicably, you tried to override your mother's final wishes. This court will not allow that theft to stand. The criminal investigation moved quickly. Derek was indicted 3 weeks later on multiple felony counts: forgery, fraud, filing false documents, theft, and criminal impersonation of a notary. The district attorney assigned a prosecutor who specialized in elder verdiven, though Mom had passed before Derek executed his plan. The intent to override an elderly person's testamentary wishes qualified. Derek's attorney, Marcus Webb, withdrew from the case immediately. Derek hired a criminal defense attorney who cost him every penny of his savings trying to negotiate a plea deal. The evidence was overwhelming. Dr. Morrison's handwriting analysis was irrefutable. The video of Mom signing the real will was time-stamped and verified. Henderson and Associates cooperated fully, providing evidence that their letterhead had been forged. The notary confirmed her seal had been stolen and misused. Mom's calendar and phone records destroyed Derek's timeline. In January, 5 months after Mom's funeral, Derek accepted a plea agreement. He pled guilty to forgery and fraud. The judge sentenced him to 3 years in state prison, followed by 2 years of probation. He was also ordered to pay $175,000 in restitution, covering my legal fees, Marilyn's fees, Dr. Morrison's fees, and the costs of the investigation. But the financial penalties were just the beginning. Derek's reputation was destroyed completely. The local newspapers covered the case. Local man forges mother's will for $2.3 million estate. Everyone in Sonoma County knew what he'd done. Friends who'd supported him at the funeral now refused to speak to him. Even our extended family, some of whom had initially believed his narrative about being the devoted son, turned away in disgust. The vineyard harvest happened in October, managed by Sarah with help from the staff Mom had employed for years. I flew back from Seattle every other weekend to help with decisions. By December, when the wine was aging in barrels and the vines were dormant for winter, Sarah and I sat down to discuss the future. I never wanted to own part of this, Sarah admitted, but your mom believed in me. She saw that I loved the vineyard and wanted to make it my career. Then let's make it work, I said. You run the operations. I'll handle the business side remotely. We'll split Derek's portion between us. The court gave us that option since he is incarcerated and unable to fulfill his inheritance responsibilities. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Your mom would love that. She would, I agreed. She built something beautiful here. Derek tried to steal it, tried to corrupt her legacy. But we stopped him. The civil suit Derek's attorney had threatened never materialized. Derek had no case, no standing, and no credibility. Everything proceeded according to Mom's actual wishes. In March, I visited Derek in prison. I'm not sure why. Maybe I needed closure, or maybe I wanted him to see that his betrayal hadn't destroyed me. He looked diminished in the orange jumpsuit, his expensive suits replaced with institutional clothing. We sat across from each other in the visiting room, a scarred table between us. Why did you do it? I asked. Derek stared at the table. I convinced myself I deserved it. I was there. I worked the vineyard. I took care of Mom. You had your career. It seemed fair. So you forged her will, stole a notary seal, lied to everyone at her funeral. I thought I could get away with it. I thought you wouldn't have proof, that it would be my word against yours. He finally looked up. I didn't know about the video. I didn't know she'd been so specific with her attorney. You didn't know Mom at all, I said. She believed in fairness above everything. She would have left us equal shares even if I'd never visited, even if you'd done everything perfectly. That's who she was. But you couldn't accept that. You wanted everything. Derek's expression hardened. Easy for you to say. You had your successful career, your life in Seattle. The vineyard was all I had. You had half a $2.3 million estate. Derek, you had a successful vineyard business, a beautiful property, and a family who loved you. That wasn't enough because you're greedy. You didn't just steal from me, you stole from Sarah. You tried to override Mom's final wishes. You disrespected everything she built. I stood. You did this to yourself. I left without looking back. 2 years later, the vineyard is thriving. Sarah has expanded our Pinot Noir production and added a small tasting room. I've partnered with her remotely, handling marketing and distribution while she manages the viticulture. Mom's legacy grows stronger every year. Derek was released after serving 2 years of his sentence. He moved to Oregon, far from Sonoma County, and the reputation he'd destroyed. We don't speak. I've heard he works at a restaurant, washing dishes and trying to rebuild some semblance of a life. Sometimes I think about that moment at the funeral reception when he announced his fake will with such confidence. He'd thought he'd won, thought he'd stolen everything, thought I'd simply accept his narrative because I was grieving and unprepared. But I knew Mom. I knew her values, her fairness, her integrity, and I knew that a woman who debuilt a successful vineyard from nothing would never leave such an unbalanced, unjust estate plan. I'd already hired Marilyn to investigate before Derek even finished his announcement. I'd already obtained Mom's real will. I'd already contacted Dr. Morrison to analyze the forgery. Derek had underestimated me, underestimated Mom's preparation, and vastly underestimated the power of truth backed by irrefutable evidence. The handwriting expert took 23 minutes to identify the forgery. The probate court took 1 hearing to invalidate Derek's theft. The justice system took 5 months to hold him accountable. Mom's actual wishes were honored. Her vineyard continues producing award-winning wine. Her granddaughter Sarah's daughter, born last spring, will grow up running through the same vine Rose Mom planted 30 years ago, and every harvest, when we taste the new vintage, I raise a glass to the woman who taught me that integrity matters more than inheritance, that truth is more powerful than lies, and that justice, when backed by evidence and executed through proper channels, will always prevail. Derek tried to steal Mom's legacy. Instead, he lost everything while that legacy flourished exactly as she intended. The vineyard belongs to those who truly loved her and respected her wishes. That's the real inheritance Mom left behind.